I think it's actually critical that something gets resolved rather than later, especially over the weekend. The market has been increasingly trading with more and more anxiety. Investors are selling first, asking questions later across multiple markets, not just the equity markets, not just the currency markets, but there's a high degree of uncertainty about, what could and would happen, and then what is the ramifications of any resolution. And considering how nicely the U.S. handled, for lack of a better word, Fannie and Freddie, I think you have a situation now where the government is basically saying, the market, you're going to have to sort out what's going to happen with Lehman Brothers. We're not going to be able to do it for you.
Well, certainly this week started, as you say, with essentially the government seizure of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. And that was, I suppose, intended at least partly to tell the markets, we're not going to let the major institutions go to the wall. So that was all meant to be reassuring, and yet we've had a very volatile week.
I think it's actually been very, very clear. The government came in and said, look, the homeowners in the U.S. need Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae to continue to issue mortgages, continue to keep the mortgage market going. And plus, what the behind the scenes is the sovereign wealth funds and central banks around the world, which own vast stockpiles of Fannie and Freddie debt, were very concerned that something would happen to them, and then they would start pulling their money out in large sizes, which would then have a knock-on effect dramatically on both interest rates and the U.S. dollar. I think Lehman Brothers, is more of a problem on the headlines, where your people are seeing they maybe have money invested with Lehman Brothers, maybe they bought stock from them, or even they're a counterparty in terms of market dynamics, and that causes a domino effect, which is really difficult to perceive, and it's not very clear where it ends up.
Well, let's come back to the week on the markets, because stepping aside from the major news, it's been a very, very volatile time, or certainly we've seen some clobbering of a lot of stocks. What's going on? Is it about Lehman Brothers and Fannie and Freddie, or is it about growth and the economy generally?
I think it's a combination of both. I think, many investors and traders will use any opportunity to sell now and ask questions later, because the market is rewarding those who get out, sooner rather than later and quicker. So I think the situation with Lehman Brothers is causing a high degree of anxiety in the investment community, on the Wall Street, on the floors of the exchanges, where obviously they're a major presence, and that permeates out there to the general investment community. And so it's very, very clear a mental psychology where people come up and say, my God, Lehman goes under, why should I own any financial stock? And then if a financial stock goes under, why do I own anything that's related to that? And so I think what you then see is people put their money in bonds, put their money in not even corporate bonds or even Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, they put them back in Treasury bonds. And something that I think is interesting to see is the currency movements around the world have really been reflective of investor psychology in a very clear way this week. The dollar getting very, very strong, even in the backdrop of a weak, economy and problems, really shows that it's a safe haven currency again in global turmoil. And the other thing that you're seeing is a significant rally in the Japanese yen, significantly showing that Japanese investors are repatriating money outside of foreign markets as well. Those two dynamics are important to watch.